Hey everybody, it's Dynamite Show. It's just me, Paul Fontaine. Jeff Hawkins is not available this evening. He will explain why, probably on his social media, but if not, I'm sure he'll talk about it next week. Last minute thing. So fortunately or unfortunately, you just got me today, but I'll do my best. I've done this before, been doing it for a while, so hopefully I'll get through it. And I'll rely on you guys in the chat to kind of fill in some gaps, and I may even ask you some questions, and you can help me out here. But yeah, it was AEW Dynamite from Clarksville, their arena debut, and they did 2,485 fans. So not a great crowd for Dynamite, but I think it's a small market, and they were pretty hot at times. Other times, not so much. But overall, I thought they were pretty good. Before I get into the show, though, I want to. I'm going to talk about this plethoric. Don't call Tony Khan a money mark. Don't want to get you suspended. Thoughts on Wrestle Dynasty, Omega, Gabe. That's kind of what I want to talk about. So as most of you are probably aware, and if you only watch Dynamite, you weren't aware until this show aired. AEW wrestlers did appear on New Japan show this past weekend on Sunday. And it did come out that the reason they weren't promoting it was because it airs on New Japan World, which is a streaming service that theoretically is competing with Max. So Max didn't want them promoting something that was going to be on another broadcaster. And that makes a lot of sense. So they did show highlights of it tonight, which was good. But the big stuff on that show, we had Willow and Athena. We're in a 4-way for a title shot of their choosing, which was won actually by, I wish I had the results here, but I think it was Momo Watanabe. She pinned the Perez-Athene, I think is how it's pronounced, after Thekla came in and nailed Athena with a baseball bat, just like one of the hardest shots you'll ever see, but I guess it's a gimmicked shot. And and that led to a Hekla and Athena match that's going to happen this weekend in Japan for the ROH title. And then Momo gets to get a title shot at any title of her choosing. We also had Brody King, Claudio Castagnoli. They lost their matches on Wrestle Dynasty. Jack Perry as well lost to Yota Tsuji. Claudio lost to David Finlay, and Brody King to, gosh, I'm forgetting. It was a smaller guy. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Everyone wants to talk about Kenny Omega and Gabe Kidd, which was fantastic. If you went to fightgamemedia.com, saw my matches of the week, it was obviously number one for the week. Could end up being the match of the year. It would have been probably top 3 for me for last year. I don't know if I would have had it 1 or 2, but I mean, if you had it 1 or 2 for last year, I wouldn't argue too hard with you, because it was literally one of the best matches you're ever going to see. Kenny Omega is phenomenal. Gabe Kidd was right there with him. Just a great match. They worked, Kenny was selling his abdominal injuries. They did a thing here, and this is what we're talking about here in the chat with Chris Charlton all night. If you watch the show, and I realize some people may have just watched the Kenny match, and really all the time when Charlton's on commentary, he's constantly throwing jabs at AEW. Like, this is not a new thing for him. I watch most of the New Japan shows, almost all of them, and he always throws in a little dig here and there. He'll say something about Okada leaving to take the money, and and how he's just doing catchphrases and stuff like that. And he'll say like, this is where the best wrestle, basically just stealing the AEW catchphrase. If you haven't proven it on the Blue Cerulean mats, you can't say you're the best in the world, stuff like that. Well, he took it about 3 levels up on this show, and specifically at the beginning of the Gabe Kidd Kenny Omega match, where he just went off on Tony Khan and AEW, called Tony Khan a money mark. He questioned the uses of Okada, Ospreay, Jay White in specific. He did not bring up Ricochet, which some people noted, given that he came from WWE, and he downplayed the Continental Classic, saying it's not as as prestigious and not as strenuous, or whatever, however you put it, as the G1. So kind of insinuating, yeah, Okada won that, but it's not the G1, so they shouldn't be including it as they are. So that all happened, and then the next day they had their New Year's Dash show, and Chris Charlton wasn't on commentary. And immediately, speculation was, oh, what happened? Well, apparently one source says 2-month suspension, another source says indefinite suspension. So whichever one you want to take, I mean, it could be, both could be right. Somebody could have said indefinite, kind of thinking it's going to be 2 months, and the other one might have just flat out been told 2 months. And during the show, and a lot of people, probably a lot of people didn't watch the show. I did. And there was a spot after one of the matches where Jeff Cobb was he's doing a heel turn, and he was at the desk, and he told he told Walker Stewart, who is the play-by-play announcer, told him to shut up. And then he says, "Why are you here by yourself tonight? You better watch what you say." And then Walker said, "Well, I'm not at liberty to say why I'm here by myself." So, clearly he was told not to comment on it. And then Jeff Cobb brought it up anyways. So later on, a day or two later, on social media, Tony Schiavone decides that he's going to make a tweet or a post. And this is what he said. "Hey, at Reason JP," which is Chris Charlton's handle, "speaking for all of us in AEW," and of course, Tony is an executive in AEW, so when he says "speaking for all of us," that carries a little bit of weight. "GFY," which for the uninitiated stands for "go fuck yourself." So he says, "Hey, Chris Charlton, speaking for all of us in AEW, go fuck yourself. And speaking for all of us who've been around you, take a shower once in a while." So he tweets that out January 6th, 3:09 p.m. So that was the day after the show in the afternoon. He deleted it pretty quickly, but obviously a lot of people screenshotted it. There was thousands of replies and likes and comments. Didn't take long. Things blew up. Well, fast forward to Dynamite tonight, and we had Excalibur, we had Matt Menard, we had Ian Riccoboni. We did not have Tony Schiavone. And I don't remember the last time Tony Schiavone missed a Dynamite, if he has. Excalibur explained that he's on assignment and did not give a timetable as to his return. So immediately speculation was that he's been suspended. I would not be surprised at all if he was. If it was me, I would have. I've heard people get fired for less than this, because it's one thing for a talent to say something like that, but when you are the play-by-play voice of the company and an executive, and as has been described, Tony Khan's right-hand man, that is not a good look publicly, in my opinion. So, it hurt the show. I think some people liked it. I would have preferred if it was just Ian and Excalibur. I just personally can't stand Ian and Matt Menard in the booth at the same time. It's too much. Like, they both are very abrasive, and they like to talk loud, and they don't know when to shut up. And I will say that during the Kenny Omega segment at the end, it was hurt, because Kenny was trying to soak in the crowd, and as a viewer, you also wanted to soak in the crowd, and these guys just wouldn't shut up. And to me, like, that hurt it. And you have to know when to talk and when not to talk. And that comes with experience. Someone says here, exciting stuff. Charlton versus Schiavone, exploding barbed wire match. He also pointed out Chris Charlton to lead Bullet Club War Dogs. I don't think this was a work, that I've seen dumber works. Let me just say that. I've been watching wrestling for a really long time. And if this is all part of some elaborate plan to get people interested in Forbidden Door and have it be the two promotions are actually feuding with each other, I would not I wouldn't say I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised that they'd be so stupid to do something like that, is I guess what I'll say. Because I think the appeal of these shows is not one promotion versus the other. It's having wrestlers from one promotion wrestle people from the other promotion that they don't normally get to wrestle. I don't think people really are terribly interested in these two promotions feuding with each other. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, if you're a big fan of New Japan, you really resent the fact that AEW stole all your favorite wrestlers. And if you're a fan of AEW, maybe you resent the fact that, Dave Meltzer gives higher star ratings in the Tokyo Dome. Like, I don't know. Maybe, but I got to think that the amount of people that would appeal to is very low. So yeah, Fernando puts it well. He says it's supposed to be a goodwill wrestling event. And yeah, that's what I think. And it's been successful in the past. They've done some pretty good pay-per-view buy rates from it. They've sold a lot of tickets to the shows. The one in Toronto a couple of years ago, I think it sold 17,000 tickets. They're going to be in London this year. I'm sure they're going to be a really big gate. And they've got the matches. They set up Tanahashi and Shibata, which may not sound like much, but I have a feeling that would make a lot of people in London pretty excited to see that. It'll be one of Tanahashi's last big singles matches. They've got, a lot of Will Ospreay, I'm sure, is going to have a very prominent position on that card. Zack Sabre Jr., Mariah May, I'm sure. So, they got a lot of stuff on that show that's going to appeal to a lot of people. And I don't think we need to have, Tony Khan and Chris Charlton feuding with each other. It's my opinion. And I don't think that's what this is. Now, maybe it'll turn into something, or maybe, Charlton will just go away for a couple months. He'll come back and it'll be fine. And maybe Tony Schiavone will be back next week. We'll see. But that's where we were tonight. A little bit more on, I thought the Wrestle Kingdom and the Wrestle Dynasty were both good cards. Konosuke Takeshita had a couple great matches. He wrestled Shingo Takagi on Saturday, and he wrestled Ishii on Sunday. Most people like the Ishii match better. I thought they were both fantastic matches. I rated the Ishii match 4.5 stars. I actually rated the one the night before 4.75. Now, I will say I love Ishii. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, but I also really like Shingo. And I just, for my style of what I like, I think that that I prefer the Shingo match, but that's not to downplay the Ishii match at all. And maybe if I watch them both again, I'd like the Ishii match more. I just kind of rate them as I see them as I'm watching them. So it may even be partially that, like on that match, on that show, like that was the first like match that actually felt like a Tokyo Dome match. And so maybe I even overrated it a little bit. I don't know. Matt has a good point. And I've seen this point made by a lot of people. I think he was taking Gabe's side in the feud, defending what Gabe has been saying, and he just took it too far. I do believe that that's what was happening. Now, I will say, though, that as the color commentator, he is the voice of the company, and he's also supposed to be neutral. So there's a difference between him doing it during commentary and Gabe Kidd doing it on social media and at press conferences before the show. Gabe Kidd is trying to sell tickets to a show, trying to build an angle. And Chris Charlton is calling a match for a show that people are already watching and that tickets have already been sold to. So unless this is building to something in the future, he shouldn't be doing that. And the fact that he got suspended tells me that he wasn't doing that. So unless, of course, if this is a work and the suspension's a work, Chris Charlton has other jobs with New Japan besides commentary. I don't know if he's still doing his other jobs. All we know is he's not on commentary. So, and yeah, he talked about how the AEW referee was being biased, shows how not serious Charlton was being. He found what Charlton said to be cathartic, but I understand why New Japan suspended him. Yeah, like I got a kick out of what he said, but I was also shocked. And again, I will admit, like when I listen to Chris Charlton, there's at least once a show where I'm kind of rolling my eyes at what he's saying. So, like I said, this is not new for him. He will always make these comments about AEW, about wrestlers that used to be in New Japan that are now in AEW. He is a New Japan guy through and through. And if you only check in on the big shows, and maybe you don't even hear Chris Charlton all that much, but I hear him a lot. And so this is consistent for him. But again, the level he took it to, specifically in the first 5 minutes of the Kenny Omega match, that's where it kind of really got out of hand. And it should be pointed out as well that, and I don't think I mentioned this, Rocky Romero was also on commentary. And throughout the show, Rocky was basically playing AEW cheerleader. And Charlton was playing New Japan cheerleader, and Walker Stewart was just trying to call the match. And when Charlton started to get out of hand, Rocky was getting upset, and you could tell he was getting upset. Now, Rocky is also an executive with New Japan, so he has roles with both companies. He was on commentary here in the role of the AEW representative, but he is also a New Japan representative. And in the back of his mind, he's probably thinking, my boss in AEW is not going to be too happy about this, so slow it down. And I believe at one point, like he even said, like he said, hey, take it down a notch. And Walker Stewart made the comment, put the guns away, which basically means stop shooting. And so, it got out of hand. He calmed down a bit. Again, later on in the match, he started in on the Bryce Rensburg stuff. He was the referee, and that was clearly in character. Dean points out he could have just echoed Gabe's words. He didn't have to editorialize. I would have even stayed away from that. There's a way you can do it by saying, this is what he said. And some of you may agree with him, and the fans in the audience clearly agree with him because they're cheering for him. Because that was the other thing that I didn't mention. The fans were totally behind Gabe Kidd, and Gabe Kidd's a heel. And Kenny got that nice pop when he first came out, and he was getting some, babyface reactions to some of his stuff. But when he started to get vicious with Gabe Kidd, they turned on him, and it wasn't quite as severe as Bret Hart and Stone Cold at WrestleMania 13, but it wasn't far off from that. And at one point there was a spot where Kenny did the Terminator dive, landed on his butt, like outside the ring. He cleared the guardrail and landed on his butt, and he was selling his hip, asked one of the young boys for a ice pack. And the young boy went and got him the ice pack, and the guy's just standing there, and he won't hand it to him. And then finally Kenny just grabs it, and he screamed at him, and he's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, like, he's got a point. This kid didn't give him the ice pack in time. But this was clearly, the fans didn't like that, and they booed him, and he was screaming at him in Japanese. So they all understood whatever he was saying. He was probably swearing at the poor kid. So, and he knew his role. He understood what was going on. The fans were churning on him, and they were cheering for Gabe. So his role is to further that and make Gabe a bigger babyface. And the next night on New Year's Dash, Gabe Kidd was the biggest babyface on the show, even though he's supposed to be heel. And I think Bullet Club War Dogs, it feels like they're churning babyface, and United Empire is churning heel. So, the sides are going to balance, and that should be interesting for the next couple months in New Japan. They got another big show coming up this weekend in San Jose, and a lot of AEW talent on that show. I don't have the card in front of me, but I know Takeshita is defending, I believe it's just the Never title against Kushida. So that should be a pretty cool match. Young Bucks Young Bucks won the IWGP tag team titles in a 3-way. I didn't mention that. And they are defending the title at New Beginnings in February. I believe it's February 11th against Naito and Hiromu Takahashi. So, that's when they'll be back. I don't think they'll be back in AEW before that. That's just my opinion. Haven't heard anything, but it doesn't feel like they're going to be back in AEW anytime soon. So we'll see. So onto this show. As I mentioned, no Tony Schiavone, no Pointer Sisters. The show kicked off just with the cold open, with Excalibur. They showed a highlight stuff from World's End and from Full Gear when Buddy Matthews and Will Ospreay were coming to the ring. So that's the match that kicked off the show. This is a match that I think a lot of people have wanted to see. for a long time. People call Buddy Matthews kind of a wish version of Kenny Omega or whatever, and I don't think that's fair. I mean, they wrestle a similar style, but they're different wrestlers, obviously, and obviously Kenny Omega's better because he's better than like 99.9999% of people that have ever done this. But Buddy Matthews is a great professional wrestler. We haven't seen him since Full Gear. I think I mentioned this last week. Actually, he had been given a personal holiday, to spend time with his family over the holidays. So that's why he has been off TV. I know a lot of people, myself included, wanted to see him in the Continental Classic, but yeah, he had been given some time off. So I think I made the joke last week that Kenny or Tony's probably just going to let him stay in Australia until they're there in February. And of course, somebody from there was listening, and they booked him for this show. So good for us, we got to see Buddy Matthews wrestle again, and him and Ospreay had a great match. They just everything you'd expect. Ospreay early in the match hit a Os cutter off the barricade. They teased the count out. Bryce was counting super fast, and then at one point, I think he realized, I got to slow this down because Buddy's not making it back in. So he did. And then Buddy got in right at 10, but he was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. And then, so he finally slowed it down. So he gets back in the ring. Ospreay hit him with another Os cutter. Then he missed a hidden blade. Buddy hit a running knee. Ospreay hit an elbow. Buddy got a stomp after a driver and a knee to the back of the head. Ospreay hit a Styles Clash, and the fans now buy that as a finisher. And they popped huge when he hit it, but Buddy kicked out. And then he was just on his knees in the middle of the ring, and Ospreay was setting up for the hidden blade, and Buddy was just like, bring it. It was kind of the same thing that Malachi Black did in his last match that we saw. I can't remember who it was he wrestled, but he just stood there and waited for the move, and he got killed dead. I think it was Adam Cole, if I'm remembering right. And Adam Cole hit him with the boom. Well, in this case, Ospreay hit him with the hidden blade and got the pin. Like I said, excellent match. I rated it 4.25 stars. No commercials, so we got to see the whole match. And after the match, Will Ospreay says, "Give it up, everybody, for Buddy Murphy." And then he immediately realizes his mistake, and he says, Buddy Matthews, please. Like he says it like 3 times just to get people, to realize, oh crap, I screwed up. But he's Buddy Matthews. And he says, grabs a mic, and he says, "Boys and girls, or whatever you identify as, I've admired this man from afar. I wrestled your best mate, Brooksy." I don't know who that is, but I assume he does. He says, he told him, he says, "You and Brody, you don't need to follow a leader. You can do this on your own. So whether it's tag gold or singles gold in your future, if you work hard enough, I'm going to see you soon. And if you ever need a man in your corner, Buddy, I'm your guy." And he offers his hand. Buddy takes it, shook his hand. Will left, and he left him in the ring to kind of get that pop. And my takeaway from this, and I don't know what you all thought, but I thought, okay, sure feels like Buddy or Malachi Black's been written off. And then I go to Twitter, and I notice one of the trending topics is that rumors are that Malachi Black's contract is up. And then I got into it, and I saw this is from Fightful. Those spoken with in AEW were of the belief that Malachi Black was finished up with AEW if he hadn't already, and they did not clarify if he'd be appearing on TV again. And so I think some other people have said that the contract, Raj Giri, who you can take, I know some people don't like him. I don't really have an opinion on him, but he said that he reported back in September that Malachi's contract was up early in the year, and then that he could be finished up with AEW. So, of course, there's a lot of rumors that he'll show up at the Royal Rumble. We'll see. But what we do know is it sure feels like he's being split off from Buddy Matthews and Brody King. So, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I would love to see Buddy and Brody as a tag team. I think they put them against Private Party and just have them destroy them. Although it feels like Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin are going to beat them to that, and we'll get to that. So they showed highlights of Wrestle Dynasty, and then, as I just spoke about, Private Party came out, and they were introduced with an entourage, and they get a promo. Said, Tennessee, what's good? Said, last Saturday on Collision, your boys made history. First ever tag team match. I was wondering, what's the history? And then he says, well, it's the first ever tag team title match featured on Max and TNT. It's like, okay. Says, we walked into Charlotte tag team champions and we left still tag team champions. And you know what? We got to celebrate, and we got to celebrate right. And he doesn't get the words out, and they're interrupted by the Hurt Syndicate. And I want to say, I thought that this was really good because a lot of people probably didn't watch Collision. And this reminds you that they won a match and they defended their titles. It gave them a big spot here on Dynamite to have a promo and a celebration, and they had like an entourage out with them and everything. And I thought it was good. So out comes the Hurt Syndicate. It's MVP, Shelton, Bobby Lashley. MVP says, we want to party too. We aren't all business. I invented this VIP status, in case you don't remember. He's trying to cut this promo, and Zay just keeps interrupting him, and literally MVP's just no-selling everything he says. He says, if we had beef, we'd be beefing already. So how about we raise a toast to private party? Can I get a shot? And so, of course, Zay pours him a shot. And he says, I want to propose a toast to these young kids, these incredibly talented athletes who successfully defended the AEW Tag Team Champions. And he says, Bobby. And then Bobby just says, taking those tag team titles. And he pours out the shot and he heads to the ring. So we know this is coming. Bobby and Shelton against Private Party. So I don't like Private Party's chances in that one, let me just say. And that led to Bobby Lashley and Mark Briscoe. And this was announced on social media. Apparently, this is a result of a bunch of stuff that happened during the Continental Classic that I have zero recollection of. And it led to this. So MVP was on commentary. Bobby's on offense to start the match. They go through a break. They come back. Briscoe gets a brief little comeback. He did a dive off the chair like he always does. And MVP went off on the ref because he said that he let Briscoe cheat. He's using an international object, he called it, and he just going nuts. And then Bobby eventually, Mark hit the froggy bow. Bobby kicks out at 1. Then Briscoe missed a corner charge, and it was just clear what was happening because as soon as he missed that charge, Briscoe stumbles out to the corner. You could see Bobby setting up, so he hits the spear, choke slam, hurt lock. It was as dominant as it sounds. It sucked to see Mark Briscoe get beat like this, in my opinion. But I guess Bobby Lashley's on to bigger and better things, and Mark Briscoe's on to do whatever. I mean, all he's got to do is cut that promo, and everybody will be in his corner again. But still kind of weird. What I found was weird, though. It seemed like they were setting up either Bobby or Shelton to go after the TNT title, but that does not seem to be the direction anymore. So we'll see. So after the match, Bobby held the hold on for, I don't know, like 20 seconds. Shelton joined in, started beating him up, and Private Party made the save with chairs, and they were standing there holding their chairs. And I thought, are they joining this group? And then no, Hurt Syndicate just backed off. So just checking the comments here. Fernando, I feel you. Poor Mark. Yeah, I agree. And it's too bad, but it's not like we didn't know. As soon as that match was announced, I thought it would be a little more competitive, but what can you do? Just got to take a sip here. So next we got the Casino Gauntlet match. And Jay White had won the number 1 spot. So he's out first. And coincidentally, Hangman is number 2. So, they've got this long-standing rivalry, as most of you are aware. White was very orange. I don't know how many people noticed that, but I did. Wheeler was the next one in, and they pointed out that Wheeler cost Jay White the match at Wrestle whatever that show was, World's End. Jay had hit the Blade Runner on Mox, and then I think Wheeler grabbed the referee and pulled him out, so he didn't get the pinfall. So he's vowed to get revenge on Wheeler. He gave him the Blade Runner like right away. And I thought, oh, man, this would be cool if they just ended it. But no, Hangman broke up the pin. Ricochet is next out. And it starts off, they go, whose house? And then, everyone thinks it's Swerve. And out comes Ricochet. And he comes out and he's just soaking in the booze. And it's pretty cool. No Swerve at all on the show tonight. So I guess he's selling that beating from Ricochet last week. And he took his time coming out. Then he jumps in the ring, and he hit, I believe it was Hangman. I just wrote down Ricochet hit him with a springboard elbow, but it was either Hangman or Jay White, I think. And he's getting massive heat. Then he dove to the outside on Jay White, hit another springboard and an Asai moonsault on Hangman for 2. They go to break. They come back, and it's White and Hangman back in the ring together. Adam Cole's out next. They react to his music, but as soon as he's in the ring, they're not reacting to him at all. Danny Garcia comes in next. He squares off with Cole. Nobody cares. Hangman broke it up. Garcia was beating on both of them, and then Jay White came in. Eventually, we got Wheeler and Garcia in a slap fight. Ricochet laid out Garcia. Now it's 2-on-1 with Wheeler. Fans are chanting, "You both suck," at Ricochet and Wheeler. Next up is Powerhouse Hobbs, and Ricochet and Wheeler were just sitting there waiting for him. He somersaulted Ricochet out of the ring, and he landed, I believe, on Hangman. I might have had that wrong. It might have been Cole. And then he just started running wild on everyone. And then Hangman came in, went after Hobbs. Ian Riccaboni said that Hangman is the only other person in this match that could match Hobbs power for power. I'm like, you say so. We had another commercial break, come back, and it's White and Hobbs going one-on-one. Hobbs took care of him easily. Fans are chanting meat, and Hobbs is flexing his pecs to their cadence of the chant. I thought that was super cool. Roderick Strong was next in. He gave everyone backbreakers. Ricochet took out his knee. Cole and Garcia attacked from behind. Now it's 3-on-1 on Ricochet, and the fans just don't even know how to react because they don't like Ricochet, but it's 3-on-1 baby faces. Like, it's so weird. Powerhouse came to his feet, and he made the save for Ricochet. Strong hit a sick kick on Hobbs. Hangman took Strong out. Ricochet took out Hangman with a back elbow. Jay White took out Ricochet with a suplex. Low blow by Ricochet on Jay White. Out comes Lance Archer. Wheeler dived onto him, but he got caught and chokeslammed. Then Archer's in the ring. He just starts chokeslamming everybody. Ended up chokeslamming Roddy Strong onto Cole. Then he chokeslammed Garcia into the turnbuckle. Ricochet dived onto him, and he got caught. And then Powerhouse Hobbs and Lance Archer, they just started playing catch with Ricochet, just throwing him back and forth across the ring. It was pretty funny. And then he finally rolls out of the ring, and it's a meat match. Fans are chanting meat. They both no-sold each other's power slams. Kyle O'Reilly came out next, and it was interesting because he came out to the conglomeration music, even though I thought he was in the Undisputed Kingdom, or so, who knows. And 3 members of that group in the match now. And Kyle O'Reilly and Roddy double team Ricochet, and Hangman comes in, and then now Cole's in, so it's 3-on-1 against Hangman, and the crowd again is not reacting at all. Hobbs comes up, he starts fighting them all 3-on-1, and then Ricochet jumped on Hobbs' back, he gets tossed. Kyle and Roddy hit a high-low on Will Hobbs, took him down. Jeff Jarrett's out next, got a huge pop, maybe the biggest one for any of these entrances. But Wheeler attacked him from behind during his entrance, and they fought to the back. So Jarrett never even got in the ring. And one of the commentators speculated that Jon Moxley is afraid of Jarrett, and he ordered this. I don't think Jon Moxley's too concerned about Jeff Jarrett. The Undisputed Kingdom's running wild in the ring, and then Hobbs just comes in and mowed them down like bowling pins. And then Archer and Hobbs are back in there again. Archer tried to black out, but Hobbs got free. Kyle O'Reilly chopped the knee of Hobbs, and then Hobbs just no-sold it, hit a spine buster, and pinned Kyle O'Reilly and got the win. And the crowd, I believe, was just taken aback. Like, they just weren't expecting the finish when it came. I don't think Hobbs is really that over right now. And so it was interesting. They did some more stuff with Hobbs later to kind of build up this match, but I don't think the fans are quite ready for this. I'm back at the comments here. Nothing against Hobbs, but the winner should have been Jay White or Hangman. I would have gone with Hangman personally. I think the problem here is that Will Hobbs is going to get booed in Cincinnati against Jon Moxley, and I think you wanted a heel in there. So yeah, I mean, no, not Wheeler, but Jeff Jarrett would have been good because I don't think people are booing Jeff Jarrett, but I also really didn't want to see Jeff Jarrett winning this match. I think Hangman would have been the best pick, but you could also argue that Hangman versus Mox is a pay-per-view match that should be built over a couple months and not on a 1-week build. Fernando says that was a fire match. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was really good. There were parts of the match that were kind of flat to me, and the finish was, I don't think the finish was set up very well. I don't think the fans really wanted it. And yeah, wasn't expecting Hobbs to win. Yeah, same here. And the thing is, Hobbs going to lose again next week. So that's, like he just lost it to Keshta. Now he's going to lose to Mox. I hope that he's going to get elevated, but I'm worried that he's just going to get pushed back down to the mid card. Isn't the match where Hobbs got injured? Somebody in the chat hopefully remembers this. I feel like the match where Hobbs got injured the first time was actually against Jon Moxley. And it was similar to this, where he'd won a match or something to get a shot at him. Maybe when Mox was the international champion. Maybe I'm just making this up in my head, but I feel like that's what happened. But and Fernando agrees with me that Mox being afraid of Double J is funny. That's kind of what was insinuating. So, interestingly enough, Renee Paquette comes in to interview Powerhouse Hobbs, and Hobbs kind of looks at her like, because she looks good. She always does. She says, "You'll be facing Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. You've been through so much. What does this mean?" And Hobbs says, "Let's shoot for a second. Jon Moxley is the one who brought me to AEW." Well, that's new news to me, but kind of makes sense, I guess. "Next week, I plan on shocking the world. But not only doing that, I'm going to make Jon Moxley my bitch." And Renee Paquette just shot him a look like, "You mother." And of course, if you don't know, Renee is married to the AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. So I found that very interesting. And someone on X pointed out to me that she's done this a few times when people are talking about Moxley. So something to keep an eye on, because maybe they're gonna churn this into storyline. And then Jeff Jarrett started coming down to the ring. They went to commercial. They come back, and Christian and Hook video package reminding us of Christian taking out Taz, and this is building up to Christian and Hook next week. So, hey, good job, promotion. Ian Riccaboni comes in to the ring with Jeff Jarrett. I thought that was weird, because Renee just did an in-ring interview, and now it's Ian. So, and I feel like the only reason Ian was in there was because MJF had a line ready for him, and he wasn't going to do it with Renee. Although he has given some interesting lines to Renee before. But yeah, so I'm ahead of myself because this is Jeff Jarrett. And so he asked, he says, "Everyone was hoping for the storybook ending here in Tennessee, but how are you feeling?" And Jeff says, "It's 2025. The last outlaw just has to ask himself one question. Do I still have what it takes to climb that mountain?" And before he can continue, he's interrupted by MJF's music. And MJF comes in the ring face to face. And of course, MJF says, "Ian Riccaboni, you Bible-thumping prick, get out of my ring." Like, okay, that was a little harsh, but Ian leaves. He says, "Jeffrey, I don't believe you and I have had the honor and privilege of meeting. I am the longest reigning and greatest AEW world champion of all time, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF," and the crowd chant along with him. He says, "And I want my Triple B back, man. But this world title seems like an awful lot of hard work. Dictator John has my belt. Powerhouse Hobbs, the number one contender. You got Jay White, Christian Cage, Hangman Page all running around." He says, and you were out there, and you were supposed to do the job, but you got beat up by Wheeler Yuta. He says, "It's like a Dr. Seuss's nightmare, all these people. None of them are worthy of holding my Triple B, but someone might be. And it's a guy who's beaten icons of this sport. 12-time world champion, 2-time Hall of Famer, Tennessee's own Double J, Jeff Jarrett." The fans chanted Double J, and he says, "Not that I knew any of this personally. I had to Google it because I'm not a dinosaur. But my dad told me he was a fan of yours when he was a little kid." And he says, "I know you want to be world champ, but based on signing your last contract, the clock's ticking. And I did some digging, and you haven't been completely honest. The contract you signed is only for one more year." Oh, was I not supposed to say that? "You don't want to retire yet, do you? But that's all that professional wrestling thinks that you've got left. I'm not here to piss you off, Double J. I want to help you, bud. You've only got 1 year left to prove that you still got it." And then the fans are like seals, and they chant along with him. He says, 1 year to make sure you can listen to those chants, to make it back to the top of the mountain. I can help you become champion of the world with one more time. And I knew what he was doing here. He wants Jeff Jarrett to win because he figures Jeff Jarrett's going to be easy to beat for the title. And of course he says, without my help, you probably couldn't even own a match. So all I'm asking is one tiny little favor, bud. When I help you take my Triple B, I'm first in line for a title shot. So JEFF, JARRETT, want to make a deal with little old me? And he extends his hand. And Jarrett grabs the mic and he says, you know what, Max? You were the AEW World Champion, just like you said. You were the longest reigning champion of all time. And that's impressive. But you're too damn young to understand that you learn more from your failures from your successes. Just because you were on top before doesn't mean you'll get there again. We got a word for kids like you here in Tennessee. We call you one-hit wonders. And you know what, Max? I know the road I got to go down. And the fans start chanting one-hit wonder. And Double J says, you know that one-hit wonder may turn out to be a nice T-shirt someday? Then he gets back to his promo. He says, I've been at rock bottom, and I'm comfortable there. The business and life has put me at rock bottom, but that gives me the opportunity to claw, to scratch, and to fight my way back to the top of the mountain. You and I both know it. You had the opportunity to enter the Casino Gauntlet, but you chose to scheme and connive. I've been on top 12 times. I'm looking for number 13. What a difference a year can make. I'm sure going to make the most of 2025. I don't need you. Hell no, I don't need you. What you're trying to sell me, I ain't buying, you entitled prick. And he hands the mic back to Double J and walks off, or to Mox, and Mox walks off. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty, it was a good exchange. Maria says one hit wonder was a good jab at MJF. I agree, and probably will be a T-shirt. Yeah, I like this. I wish MJF was doing something better, but clearly he's not in the world title picture right now. So you know what? If he can build to some match with Double J, maybe they're going to do it in Memphis or something. I bet you it'll get a lot of heat, and who knows? Maybe it'll be even for a world title shot at some point. It'll be the two of them, and then MJF will win, and then that'll get him his match with Mox. I don't know. So they showed highlights. Finally, I think they've referenced this before, but I don't think it's been shown on Dynamite yet, of Darby being written off on the final episode of Rampage, which, granted was only a couple weeks ago, but he got, I explained it last week, he got Pillmanized his neck by the Death Riders, and then Jon Moxley rolled him down a flight of stairs, and we haven't seen him since. So out comes Cope. We'll see if I can get through this without saying his actual name. They showed highlights of his match from Collision that he had. It was him and FTR against the Learning Tree. And he says, Jon Moxley, you and your Death Riders, while I was gone, you took out Bryan Danielson, possibly for good. You threw Darby down a flight of stairs, and we haven't seen him since. But you made one big mistake. You tried to go after FTR, and we're very close friends. That was a massive mistake, Moxley. You've had the Hangman, the Switch. You've told the Hangman, Switchblade, Orange Cassidy, and Darby Allin that they don't have what it takes for the grind to be champion. Well, here's what I'm going to say. No one has fought what I've fought through just to be standing here in this ring. I will die on that hill. I'm a different animal entirely. I broke my neck in a match with Eddie Guerrero, and you want to know what I did? I wrestled 20 more minutes, and I won that match. You're looking at a man who fought Malachi Black, broke my leg. You know what I did? I got up, I wrestled 10 more minutes, and I won that match. So please, Moxley, as much as I know you're one of the toughest bastards to ever fight in this ring, what can you do to me that hasn't been done before? I'm not the biggest fan of Cope these days, but I thought this was a really good promo. I wish that they were giving this amount to somebody younger, somebody that I thought had any chance of beating Jon Moxley, but fans were kind of indifferent to this. I think it didn't seem like they were reacting the way Cope was expecting them to act. So, but I think then what they did after, I think it definitely builds up what I expect will be the main event of the next pay-per-view. Death Riders music hit, and Cope is waiting for them, and they come through the crowd like they always do. And just when they're about to get to the ring, they get attacked from behind by FTR. So you've got, and Pac, I don't think was there with them at first. And so Cope ends up one-on-one in the ring with Mox, and he's getting the better of him. And then Marina comes in the ring. Cope grabbed her by the neck. He looked like he was about to do something from her. And out comes Pac, and he attacked Cope from behind with the briefcase. Claudio and Wheeler are on the outside brawling with FTR. So it's Pac, Mox and Marina in the ring. I feel like we should give her like a 1-syllable name. Maybe we call her Shafe. Pac, Mox, and Shafe. Yeah, that doesn't work. Anyways, 3-on-1 with Cope in the ring. Mox gets Cope in the Bulldog choke, and he waited until Cope passed out, and then he let it go. And then Marina got him a plastic bag, and he was going to do to Cope what he did to Danielson. And out comes Powerhouse Hobbs to make the save. He kind of just slowly saunters down to the ring. He's probably a little tired from working that Casino Gauntlet match. And the Death Riders didn't want none of Hobbs, and they backed off and went to the back. So that was kind of setting up the match for next week. So that was pretty cool. I'll just check the comments here. Yeah, you know what? Maria's got a good point here. She thinks Beth Phoenix is going to get involved and neutralize Shafe. And I that's how I felt, certainly. When I heard, like, when I honestly thought when he was sitting there and he was looking at her and he didn't know if he could hit her or not. And I really thought that we were going to see Beth Phoenix there. By the way, I don't think she can use that name. I'm pretty sure WWE owns that name, but we'll see. I expect her around at some point, though. And Fernando brings up the point, back-to-back promos from Double J and Adam Copeland, aging stars. Yeah, I think combined age of like maybe pretty close to 120, I think. That's kind of nuts when you think about it. But they're both good talkers, so whatever. We got a Mariah May promo. This is pretty funny. And now I will say I was entertained by this, but I'm also... Mariah May's been cutting these great promos lately that have no comedy in them at all. So I don't necessarily like going down that road with your serious ass-kicking world champion. Although I'm not going to lie and deny that I have said from day one, well, since August, that Mariah and Harley Cameron should be a team. They should be teamed up together. And based on this, I think it would be pretty entertaining if they were. So she starts this promo and she says, next week, women's Casino Gauntlet match for a shot at my women's world championship. So why don't you make history like the dancing little marionettes that you are? And Harley interrupted her. She just slides in on like a chair. And she says, I know you got a lot on your plate, but why don't we give them an appetizer this Saturday on Collision? Non-title, you and me, hot girl graps. And we're both attractive sometimes. And Mariah says, that's not a bad idea. And then she says, and then I'll rip your head off. And then Harley says, and then, and Mariah's like, what? I can't hear you. And she goes, you'll feel my wrath. And Mariah's like, what? I can't hear you. And she goes, you'll feel my wrath. And then she slides out again. And Mariah just looks at her. She didn't crack. She didn't even look close to cracking, but I'm sure when the camera shut off, she probably lost it because this is pretty funny. And we're going to get that match on Saturday on Collision. So that's pretty cool. Speaking of that women's Casino Gauntlet match, the next match was a number one contenders or number one spot in the Casino Gauntlet. Although Excalibur kept calling it number one seed. I don't know, whatever. It was Toni Storm, Kris Statlander, and Willow Nightingale. Winner gets number one in the Gauntlet. Winner of the Gauntlet gets the world title shot at Grand Slam in Australia. And they point out here that Willow wrestled Sunday in Japan. Here's where they announce Mariah May and Harley Cameron for Collision, as well as Cope against Big Bill and Dax Harwood against Chris Jericho. So 3 matches announced for Collision. Good job, AEW. And they did a spot right before the break that got the biggest pop of the match to that point. And it was basically Willow Nightingale catapulting Toni Storm right into Kris Statlander's lady parts. And that was, the crowd popped, the announcers popped because they'd never seen anything like it. And I don't know what was said. It looked like Ian was about to say something, but I fast forwarded to the commercial, so I didn't hear it. But they come back from break. The crowd seemed to be into Willow and Stat. They wanted to see them go at it, but whenever Toni would get involved, they would kind of lose interest. So it was kind of weird because Toni is usually probably more over than anybody, but they really want to see Willow and Stat. They've got that great chemistry. They've had some great matches, and so anyway, they eventually got the crowd. And during this match, one of the announcers pointed out that Kenny Omega's just arrived, so we're going to see him later. And we got some AEW chants, but they weren't too loud. Willow hit Stat with a pounce, whipped her into her. Both were down in the corner. Then she did a cannonball into both of them. Willow hit Toni with a DVD, Death Valley driver. She kicked out. Toni German suplex Statlander. High boot from Statlander on Willow. Double suplex by Willow on both of them. That got a really nice pop. Probably the biggest one in the match. Toni rolled her up. Stat broke up the pin. Stat and Willow did some reversal spots. Willow ended up on the outside. Statlander hit Toni Storm with the Wednesday Night Fever and got the pin. And again, it was kind of a similar reaction to when Hobbs won earlier. Like, I don't think the fans were expecting the win to happen then. And they weren't, I don't think they were expecting Statlander to win at all. So kind of like Powerhouse Hobbs earlier. So nothing wrong with Kris Statlander winning. I mean, she's a former TBS champion. She's probably one of the favorites to win. So, and they're doing the angle with Toni Storm where, she's, supposedly a rookie learning. So her losing to a former champion, that's not that bad. I saw some people were upset that Toni took the pin, but I don't think it really matters. I'm sure I'm 100% positive she's winning that Casino Gauntlet next week. If they don't, they've lost their minds. Maria agreed that it was a very funny spot. Fernando says that Mariah has not been booked very well since beating Toni for the World Championship. I would agree, but I would also say that she is doing a great job. It's just the booking isn't great. Maria agrees that Mariah doesn't need to have a match with a comedy act. I want them as a pair, but I think it would work better after Mariah loses the title. Like, I just think these two would be very entertaining together. And Mariah's getting better at the in-ring. Or I shouldn't. Mariah's always been good in the in-ring, but Harley's getting better at the in-ring. Willow and Stat are having a very entertaining rivalry, Maria points out. And Fernando reminds me, that she did just have an excellent match with the Mercedes. She had two, actually. One was one of the top 10 matches of the year in Sports Illustrated. What women's matches? I think it was number 6. And then she had the other one at World's End that was also very, very good. So, she's got a lot of credibility, and certainly her winning. I think people were expecting Toni to win. That's all. I don't think she's lost since she came back. So, but whatever. She can afford the loss, and it's a good win for Statlander. And then, here Excalibur pointed out she's the number 1 seed in that match next week, which again makes no sense. They go to break, they come back, and Renee is back interviewing again. So I guess she's gotten over her beef with Powerhouse Hobbs, and she's backstage with Toni Storm. And Toni says, "I'm not surprised I didn't win. I'm just not ready." She said, "It's an honor to be out there, and Kris Statlander deserves it. Next week, those girls are going to be amazing. I'm just not ready, but I'm going to keep working hard." She says, "I'm sorry, Renee." And then she leaves. And Renee just kind of looks at her and she says, "Okay." And she rolled her eyes. Like, she's not buying this gimmick at all. Like, I don't think she likes it. I don't know what, but maybe I'm reading too much into it. But go back and watch it. Renee's facial expressions say a lot. And she just was not into this. It didn't seem like so. So they go to break once again. They come back, and there's just a long shot of the crowd, and all of a sudden, I don't know if they had told the crowd between the breaks, okay, Kenny's out next or whatever, but spontaneously the fans started chanting for Kenny. And I guess, it could also be that, it's almost the end of the show and that's what had been promised. So either way, it worked really well. The crowd's chanting, and out he comes. And it was weird because there's this music that I didn't really recognize. And for all I know, it's what he used in Japan on Sunday, but as you all know, if you listen to this every week, I skip the entrances, so I didn't recognize the music. But it starts with this kind of weird stuff, and then it's Omega, and it's kind of has a Japanese accent, whoever's saying it, and then the music kind of kicks in. So I think it kind of changes, and I did recognize the second part of the song. But he comes out anyways. He gets a huge pop, and for the first time, the announcers acknowledge that he wrestled in New Japan on Sunday. Kind of underselling it just a tad. So more Kenny chants. Then they chanted "Welcome back," and Kenny says, "This isn't making it easy, guys, but thank you." And more Kenny chants. I will point out, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but in case I didn't, I'll say it again. the announcers just wouldn't shut up. And like, they're just talking, and they just like anytime there's, Kenny's not talking, they feel like they have to. And this is a point where they should have just let the crowd watching at home soak in the crowd in the arena, because they were really into seeing Kenny. So he says, a little over a year ago, I checked into a hospital and I was given the bad news. I had something called diverticulitis, and that got a big boo from the crowd. And of course, they're booing diverticulitis, not Kenny. It says, for those that don't know what it is, they took 2 feet of my intestines from me. And if I hadn't checked myself in when I did, the doctor told me, Kenny, you'd have been dead. And apparently that's true story. So, I'm glad he went in when he did. He says, for the past year, it's been a roller coaster ride. Fans are chanting, don't give up. He says, after successful surgery, I had 2 questions. First question, Doc, how long is my recovery going to be? Second one, when is it that I can get back in the ring? And the doctors told me, Kenny, you're going to be lucky if you can return to a normal way of life, let alone return to the ring or to the Kenny Omega that you used to be. So being a professional wrestler, you push things just a little too hard. And what happened was I ended up in the hospital 4 more times for 4 weeks at a time. And during one of those stays, I asked myself, is this even worth it? Can I even do it? And the fans start chanting, yes, yes, yes. He says, I can't lie. There was a moment I felt giving up was the safest option. And once I considered that option, I realized, what purpose do I even have if I don't have you people with me? So a few days ago, I tested that theory and I found my purpose in Tokyo, just like I found my purpose here tonight. And if I'm not here in this ring, giving you all everything that I have every single week, I'm not living. And if I'm not showing you guys that I can be the god of professional wrestling, I'm not living. I can't do the things that I used to do, but there's this new version of Kenny Omega. He isn't concerned about money, power, revenge. I can still prove that I'm still the... And before he can finish, he's interrupted by Don Callis's music. And Kenny's looking around because he's not stupid. And he knows that Callis never comes out by himself. And then Callis has a mic and he says, look who's back from the... And before he can get the last word out, Kenny attacked him. And the announcers pointed out they think he's the first guy that ever got his hands on Callis. I think that might have been Jon Moxley, actually, because there was that one time when he got injured backstage. But anyways, Cage and Archer made the save, and now Kenny's being double teamed. They toss him in the ring. Kenny makes a brief comeback. Then Kyle Fletcher joined in. Now it's 3-on-1. And Cage hits him with a gut punch. And that crowd just boo, and Kenny's selling it like a champ. And then who should make the save but Will Ospreay comes out with a chair. Heels took off. Ospreay's holding the chair like he's going to hit Kenny. Kenny turns around, but Ospreay tossed it. And they just get into a staring match. And the fans are chanting, holy shit. And they didn't shake hands. They didn't hug. They just stared at each other. And then eventually they were sharing words. They were back and forth. We couldn't hear what they were saying, but we don't know. Because as you may remember, I mean, Ospreay turned on Kenny at one point. I think he hit him with a screwdriver, if I'm not mistaken. And so, they've got some bad blood. And in that time, since Kenny left, Will Ospreay left the Don Callis family. You remember the last time we saw Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay wasn't even part of AEW. He was still signed to New Japan, but he would make occasional appearances. And at one of those appearances, he wrestled Kenny he wrestled Jericho in Toronto, but then he wrestled Kenny, I believe, another time. Anyways, at one point, I know he hit him with the screwdriver. They announced the matches for next week. We got Jon Moxley and Hobbs for the world title, Christian Cage versus Hook. And that's been built up for a couple weeks. We've got the women's Casino Gauntlet, and just signed by Tony Khan, Kenny Omega and Brian Cage next week. So we're going to get Kenny's first AEW match. Kenny put the chair down. He looked like he was about to sit in it. Ospreay leaves, but he's glaring at him. Starts walking in the back, but he never took his eyes off Kenny. And Kenny had a mic in his hand, and he was trying to talk into it, but they're trying to go off the air, and we're not hearing anything he's saying. So I assume he probably cut a promo to the live crowd after the camera shut off, but we didn't hear anything else that he had to say. So overall, I thought, I thought the show was pretty good. There was some stuff I didn't like, but more that I liked than what I didn't like. I thought the main event segment was good. It wasn't great. There's a few things I would have done maybe slightly differently, but It's hard to tell how it got over with the crowd because it was such a small crowd, but it seemed like the people that were there really liked it. Fernando points out that he thinks it's going to be a pay-per-view caliber Dynamite next week. I know that AEW sources that close to people in AEW have said that this is a really important show for them. I think might have something to do with sweeps weeks or something. That the ad rates are really important, so they want to do a really, really good rating next week. And obviously, you got a world title match, you got a women's Casino Gauntlet, you got Kenny's first singles match. I'm sure they'll probably announce 5 more things on social media this week. We'll go back to some of these comments. Dean points out, glad the doc knew to call Kenny by his work name. Well, his name is Tyson Smith, as some of you may know, but Kenny's a worker. Kenny is the best. Like, Kenny is so good at this. Fernando says Kenny had a better return match last weekend than HBK, in my opinion. Well, I mean, Kenny had literally one of the best matches that have ever happened. I don't think there's been 20 matches in history that have been better than that one. And I mean, it may be a lot less than 20. So yeah, he had a better match last weekend than HBK. The question would be, in 20 years, will people remember that match like they remember the HBK Triple H match? And that I don't know, because it's such a bigger stage when you're in WWE. But I'm sure for fans of Kenny Omega, that's a match they'll never forget. And I am one, so I will never forget. But I think, and again, not to downplay it at all, because it was a freaking amazing match. I rated it 5 3/4 stars. Okay. And people will joke about me giving matches more than 5 stars. The way I explain it when people ask, how can it be more than 5 stars? My response is, well, I watched over 3,800 matches last year. Out of those 3,800 matches, there were 30 of them, so less than 1%, that I gave 5 stars to. So of those 5 stars, some of them I rated higher than 5 stars, so I could say, well, this match was better than that match. So it's like bonus points. But they're all 5 stars, but some 5-star matches are better than other 5-star matches, because, I'm sure it's the same thing with movies, right? Like when you go to an IMDb and they ask you to rate a movie, I'm sure, if you've done that, you've probably rated a bunch of movies 10 out of 10. Well, some of the 10 out of 10s you probably like better than other 10 out of 10. So, that's how I explain that. Anyways, I don't feel like I have to justify it, but I get that question every once in a while. Maria liked the ending. Excellent way to end the show. Yeah, I mean, I've seen people that thought it could have been better. I'm sure there's a lot of people that really, really liked it. And again, I'm kind of in the middle, but more liking it. And especially as I recapped it. Sometimes when I'm watching, I just, it's hard when you're watching and you're writing stuff down and everything. You're not really thinking about what's happening. You're just writing it down. So when I go over the shows, and I will say, peeling back the curtain a little bit, when I do the show with Jeff, there's a lot of times when Jeff and I will get together, usually 5 minutes before the show starts, and we'll kind of go over what we're going to do and everything. And we'll both say this show sucked or something like that. Right. And then when we actually do the recap, we find that we actually enjoy it more. And you guys listening might not think that, because, we'll get, you guys are hard in AEW or whatever. But I'll find that I enjoyed the show more sometimes after I recap it, because I pick up on things and whatnot. And sometimes it goes the other way too. Sometimes I will say I like the show, and then as we're recapping it, Jeff will point out some stupid things that didn't make sense. And that they're the only, when I'm going over this show, there isn't much on here that I can say was bad. I mean, not really anything. The Bobby Lashley Mark Briscoe match, I wasn't expecting it to be anything great. I'm just disappointed that Mark Briscoe lost the way he did. And I wish MJF was doing something better than what he's doing, but it's going to be entertaining, and what he did was entertaining, so I can't complain about that. And and then the women's match was pretty good. Sometimes the women's matches are not as great on this show, depending on who they have out there, but it was really good this time. There's really not much. Just a couple of the finishes didn't get over the way I thought they would. So that's not their fault. They booked a good show. It's just sometimes you don't get the reactions you want. Fernando says Will Ospreay and Buddy Murphy was the match. Buddy Matthews. I found Will Ospreay's burner account here. It's Buddy Matthews, man. It's not Buddy Murphy. Anyways, I'm joking. I agree. It was definitely the match of the night. Casino Gauntlet, I thought was, just slightly under that. In terms of wrestling, I could see, and I will say this, whenever I like a show, I find people don't like it. And then when I don't like a show, those are the ones people love. So I'm going to hear people complaining that there wasn't enough wrestling on the show. That's probably what I'm going to hear if people didn't like it. But for me, and we've talked about this on the show before, like I personally would rather see a good promo. I shouldn't say I'd rather see a good promo. I would just as soon see a good promo as a good match. And I don't really look at it either way, like a 4-star match or an excellent promo. Same thing to me. Like, it's a good show is what I want to see. And the promo segments were pretty good. And if you wrote out on paper, we're going to see we're going to see a Jeff Jarrett promo interrupted by MJF, followed by a Cope promo, and that's going to take up 25 minutes of TV time, I would have said, oh, that's going to be rough. But it worked out all right. So, Maria says she hopes Buddy. Now I'm confused. Is it Buddy Murphy or Buddy Matthews? It's Buddy Matthews, right? It's Buddy Matthews. You guys are confusing me now, but she hopes he gets a serious singles push after his performance. I mean, he also had that match at Full Gear, and a lot of you probably didn't see it because it was on the pre-show, but it was him and Commander and Beast Mortos and Dante Martin, I want to say, but I might be wrong about that. Whoever the fourth one, I think it was. He stole the show, and he was getting cheered over every one of them. And then he had this match, and he gets over every time. And I agree. I think he should beat Daniel Garcia. And maybe that was the plan. Maybe that's why they steered away from supposed to do Bobby Lashley, Danny Garcia match. Maybe they're going to do Buddy Murphy and Danny Garcia. And I could see him. Heck, they're going to Australia. You know what? I'm calling it right now. Buddy Murphy wins the TNT title from Daniel Garcia at Grand Slam. Write it down. That's my stone cold lock of the month. That's the one. Fernando, Dynamite gets an 8.9. I wouldn't go quite that high. Well, like 8.25 maybe. It was a pretty good show. There's been shows with better matches, and there's been shows with better promos, but this had a good combination of both. So yeah, it was really good. I mean, 8.25 and 8.9, it's not that much different in my opinion. So it's a really good show. Next week looks like it's going to be, I wouldn't say it's going to be as good because we don't know what else. We got some matches. Women's Casino Gauntlet. I mean, there's no reason that shouldn't be good. Mox and Powerhouse. That one could go either way in my opinion. Like I hope it's good. I especially for Hobbs. Cage and Hook. That's another one. I don't know. Like it's going to be a big storyline match. Kenny Omega and Brian Cage can be awesome. Like it's gonna be similar to the Will Ospreay and Buddy Matthews match, but it's gonna be better because it's Kenny freaking Omega and it's Brian Cage. Never has a bad match. He gets a bad rap, but that dude works his ass off and he always has a good match. So that could end up being one of the best TV matches of the year, unless Kenny Omega wrestles on TV every week like he says he's going to, and then maybe like by the end of the year it's going to get blown away. But I'm looking forward to next week. I really am. So so that's it. I mean, we didn't have Jeff here to balance it out. Normally we go about 90 minutes. I went 68, and I think I stopped 3 times for sips. Like I got my Diet Coke, I barely touched it. But Jeff will be back next week, I'm sure. And I think he's okay. He texted me right before the show started, and he just asked how was the show. So he hadn't even seen it yet. So he had stuff that he had to take care of that, last minute he couldn't do the show. So you just got me. Hopefully I didn't bore you. I think I always thank people, and I didn't do it because I was thrown off at the beginning. So I want to thank you all for watching and listening on the Fight Game Media free audio feed on Thursday morning. Maria, excellent stream. Well, thank you, Maria. Oh yeah, like I said this at the beginning, Transferring Heat, you might not have been here, but I got the sense that the House of Black is done. I think rumor is that Malachi Black's done with AEW. I guess we'll find out. It's possible he could be at the Royal Rumble. I guess we'll see. That's February. So if his contract was up in January, like some people are speculating, then he easily could be at the Royal Rumble. So we'll see. him and his wife, Zelina Vega, would be back in the same company. So, good for them if they are. I think I'll just say this before I sign off. When he debuted in AEW, like I was never a big fan of his, like in WWE. I just didn't like the spooky stuff that he was doing, and he always had good matches, but not great. I didn't think matches, like you just wasn't really the style I was into at the time. But man, when he showed up in AEW, he freaking knocked it out of the park when he was feuding with Cody at first. And I thought, there's no way this guy isn't going to be headlining pay-per-views in like a year, if not winning the championship. Like, I just thought he was so hot. It was right as we were coming out of the pandemic and we were getting crowds for the first time and they were reacting huge to him. I went to Double or Nothing in 2022 and I think there was a match there. It was House of Black against the Elite, I want to say. And so I think it was the Bucks and Omega against House of Black. And when Kenny Omega and Malachi Black got in the ring together, before they even locked up, the fans were chanting, "Holy shit." So they wanted that match. And I don't think we ever got it, unless somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But so I do feel like the AEW kind of missed the ball with him. But I know a lot of it was him. He didn't want to play ball in a lot of cases. Rumors are that he didn't want to do jobs to certain people, or he didn't like certain storylines or whatever. That's the rumors. He also wanted to go back to WWE when Paul Levesque took over, because Paul Levesque really likes him. So, there was, and then the fans kind of turned on him as well. But whenever he got in the ring, he always had great matches. Like even the match he had with Adam Cole, and Cole has not been great since he came back. And that match he had the last time we saw him, I thought was a good match with a confusing finish. So best of luck to him in his future endeavors, pardon the pun, if he is indeed gone. Him, Ricky Starks, Miro, who knows what's going on with them, but hopefully we see them again someday. You got to be willing to do some jobs in wrestling. Absolutely. That's a problem for a lot of people. So again, thank you all for listening. Thank you for joining me. So for Jeff Hawkins, who should be back next week, I'm Paul Fontaine, and this has been The Dynamite Show.